Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Mitch here at IndySoft. I hope you're all doing well. Hope you're having a fantastic week. It is Tip Tuesday, and like all of my videos, I always like to use, kind of consistent, common questions I get from customers when I'm doing product demos or working with existing customers. So over the last week, and even yesterday, actually, I got asked, does IndySoft have the ability to import equipment list from Excel? So it could be a situation with a commercial cow lab, like the customer I was talking with yesterday. They just were trying to onboard a new customer. They went out and won a new account. They had an equipment list in Excel, and they had hundreds of records that they wanted to go ahead and import into the system. In a manufacturing or an enterprise scenario, could be you in the onboarding stage, importing or implementing IndySoft. It could be a new facility that wants to migrate in and join your deployment. But the concept is you have a massive amount of equipment or just information in Excel, and you want to import that into IndySoft. So we actually have a utility. And it's actually going to be tucked away in our administration console area. It's called our text file import utility. A lot of our customers are going to still call this the IS import, standing for the IndySoft import tool. I still even personally call it that. But this tool is meant for administrators only, so we do require you to authenticate and log in. So I'm going to go ahead and get logged in as an admin. And what you're going to see here is on this very first step, there's a series of options or choices where you can select what type of data is it that you want to import. Now, in my experience, greater than 90% of all imports are always going to fall under this equipment information category. However, you do have the ability to import in maybe a new list of departments, a new list of descriptions or staff or employees, etc. But we're going to kind of use this example just here for the equipment information. So we're going to go and select that. Now the next step is going to be where we're going to do some setup here of the import itself. Now there's some choices in here, and the very first and maybe the most important one to recognize is we kind of want you to use one of two file types, either a comma delimited or a CSV file or a tab delimited file. Either option is sufficient. I personally prefer tab delimited, and I'll show you why in just a moment. But again, either option is perfectly just fine. Now, the first thing we want to do is we're going to choose this type, right? What is our file type? And we really need to go navigate to the file itself. However, what I'm going to do is I've prepared, prior to making this video, I prepared an Excel sheet that we're going to utilize. Some very basic columns, A through I. Now, this is an Excel file, so it's an XLSX or XLS format here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to save a copy of this. And instead of saving it as an Excel workbook, either I'm going to choose CSV or I'm going to do a text file. And I'm going to use the text tab delimited in this case. Now I'm going to put this on my desktop just for ease of access. So we're going to say here desktop, and I'm going to call this my sample video to use. I'm just going to give it a number so I know which one it is. So now I've got this text tab delimited file on my desktop. Okay, I really don't need the Excel sheet anymore. And honestly, I really only need the text file just so I can see my headers, okay? And I'll explain why here in just a moment. So now what we're going to do is I've got the text file open here. I've got IS import or the text file import wizard still open. I'm going to navigate to that file, and that's again on my desktop. And I'm going to grab that, which is right here. Okay, so I'm going pretty quick. Now, one thing I will point out is if you are using a date format, I do have some dates in my file here. I've got my cal due date. If you're using a different format, maybe instead of month, day, year, you want to do day, month, year, or something like that, you can adjust that if necessary. Okay. All right. So the next thing we want to do is we do this basic setup here under step 2. Then we're going to go to step 3, and we're going to select what fields. So this is where we need to do the mapping. Okay. So my first row is the company. I've got that set up already. Then I've got the ID number. Then I've got the serial. I need to go add the description in, so I'm going to go find description here in my available choices, and now you'll notice it just adds that to the bottom, but I can nudge that up to the appropriate row of where that's going to be. And then I've got my equipment type column, so I'm going to go grab type, and we're going to do the exact same thing. Once I select that, you can see where it placed that right in there, just where my cursor was at. But now I've got my type column, manufacturer model. Now I do have my cal due date and my schedule type. And I specifically set this up to talk about this one. As you all know, or most of you know, IndySoft actually has multiple different schedule types, okay? Or you have the ability to have multiple different schedule types. So when we look at this, you're going to see here, you have to declare what is your schedule type so we know to import it in. Like if you don't actually have a column that says schedule type, you'll need to set up something called defaults in here, which we can show you that at another time, or it's in the manual. But the concept is IndySoft lets you have maintenance schedules, calibration schedules, R&R schedules, so you can have as many of these schedule types as you need. So what we need you to do is actually, we're going to bring in our schedule due date, which that's going to be that last column, but then I'm also going to bring in my schedule type. And the concept of the type is, now it knows what type of schedule to create, okay? So I've done my mapping. You can see here I've got company ID, serial description, type, make, model, cal due date, and schedule type. Now, what I like about this is we don't just have to blindly accept that this is going to work. There's actually a preview option. So it allows me to look at my mapping details, and it lets me actually take a look here, and I'll expand this out. So I can see here, company's going to company. I've got 50 characters to work with, ID to ID, serial to serial, so forth. You can see that all the way down. And the concept is it allows you to actually see where is your mapping right, because in my case, I made all my headers very aligned, but that may not be the case with the file type that you're working with from your customer. Now, the next thing here is this arrow actually allows me to even preview my data. So you can see here, if I go down to that third row where I've actually got a proper item in here, you'll see I've got my ID number, it's going in the right place. You can actually do some previews here to make sure everything looks good. Now, if the preview looks good, at this point, I am going to close out my text file because we don't want to have the same file being utilized by two systems. We have our text file import wizards about to utilize it. I don't want Notepad utilizing it as well. All right, so at this point, we're all set up. All we have to do is hit finish. Now, because this is an administrative tool, we typically recommend that you do have a couple pop-ups here is going to come up. So the first one, I was about to say, it was about a backup. That's what this message here is for. It's just saying, hey, you're about to import your data. It's a good practice to make sure you have backups in place before doing so. So I'm going to say yes on that. I know I've got backups here. Now, this is also another option that comes up that says, when we're doing this import, what if this equipment already exists? If that is the case, do you want to update it with new data from the Excel file? If I say yes, it will do just that. If I say no, it will just bypass that record and not touch it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say yes on this one. And then the last pop-up that comes up here is in my Excel file or my text file, I had the company name declared. It was just called test import company. However, if you don't have a company name, we're just going to put it into a default company because, as you all know, all equipment must belong to a company or a customer in IndySoft, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and say yes and accept that. And at this point, this is, 800-900 records. I probably should have used maybe a slightly smaller data set as this imports in, but as you can see, it's moving relatively quickly. So this is about 900 records. It's probably going to take about 15 to 20 seconds. And then once we're done, it's going to give me a pop-up dialog. It's going to, let me know if there's any errors at all. So I could have some bad SQL or some bad data where I had maybe a foreign character typed into that Excel file. It would let me know that. If I had any columns that had too many fields, so for example, like our description field only lets you have 100 characters. If I had a record that had 140 characters in that column, it would give me an error log. Now it's still going to import in the first 100 characters, but it's going to let you know that we had to truncate that, okay? So that's the concept here, is basically once this import is complete, then it's going to give us an error log if one exists. Most likely there probably will not be one. So actually this is a good example. I actually did have a few errors in here, and really the only one was, it looks like for one particular record, I actually had a blank company column. So it just lets me know that. So for record CDI 102, I'm actually glad that happened. That was just an error when I was creating my Excel sheet. So I'm going to close that out. And then now, if we go to the software, that was all under my test company, or excuse me, test import company. So if I actually navigate over, I look for that. For my test import Inc., what we're going to see is there's all of that equipment we just imported in. So all the way to the schedule, to all these whatever fields that we had declared in there, okay? So this text file import wizard, yes, it's for bringing in equipment information, But I also encourage you to look at some of the other options in there. It could be you could be a customer in the data migration or the onboarding stage, and you want to use this tool to clean up and set your departments properly, or maybe you want to clean up and set your manufacturers properly. There's a lot of potential usage of this tool. So I appreciate you hanging in there with me. I know this is a long video. Truthfully, I feel like all my videos are long because I try to be in-depth and thorough when I make these. If you have any questions at all, please don't ever hesitate to reach out to myself. Don't ever hesitate to reach out to our technical support team. We're always eager to assist. I hope you have a fantastic week. Thanks for watching this, and I hope to see you all and talk to you all soon. Thank you.